Hi, welcome to Raj Alnai. In today's video, we are going to discuss about requirements management in reference to the architectural point of view, something relating to TOGAF. As we all know, managing the requirements is essentially important for any applications when we are working on, when we are developing. At the same time, understanding about the architectures as well as knowing about different frameworks like Jackman framework or something are essentially needed and required in any implementation in IT. TOGAF in short, which is in detail the open group application framework where the architectures, whatever the business architecture, solution data or applications architecture, systems architecture, all this. This is where in reference to the managing of requirements and how these are connecting to the TOGAF point of view in reference to the architectures and all of the thing is what our video is all about today. In this, the first stage and the first one which is called the preliminary stage. This is the first one you can see over here. The preliminary stage is the first one, where in this preliminary stage where we have to define the kind of principles and as well as the concerns, whatever we have, whatever the principles of application development in reference to the architecture part, followed by the concerns and all everything. At the same time, whatever the requirements for the future architecture, everything will be done under the preliminary stage. This is what generally preliminary stage is all about. In this preliminary stage, we will be knowing about how to define the principles and as well as concerns, followed by the kind of requirements which are something relating to the future requirements, future architectures. That's what generally the preliminary stage is all about. So in this from preliminary stage, normally whatever the first one in reference to the vision, which is called architecture vision, where this architecture vision majorly shows and chooses the kind of scope and as well as methodologies which are to be aligned with the stakeholders. That is essentially required, because if you want to align in context to the scope and as well as methodologies, because to align with stakeholders, because stakeholders will have a different understanding over the implementation of application development, all that. So we should be able in a position to understand the vision of the architecture in context to the scope and methodologies, which must be aligned with stakeholders, all that. So once the architecture vision is done, the next is called business architecture. We can see, right? So business architecture majorly uses the kind of modeling methods which will be described for an architectural vision. Majorly explains about the business architecture, majorly explains about what are the business related model methods which are to be established and which has to be explained over a period of time. This is where generally this business architecture come into existence. After that, information systems architecture is what generally we call it as information systems architecture, which majorly explains us about the kind of modeling and as well as application data architecture, which is essentially required over this. So once information systems architecture is done with, the next is opportunities and solutions. This is what the next one we can say, or else we can go with the technology architecture, where we need to transform the description of the systems, which are the basis for architectural implementation. So whenever there is an implementation which normally takes place, usually, right, which normally takes place and all that, generally this technology architecture will plays a vital and important role, where we need to transform the kind of description of the system, basis of the architecture and implementation and all, everything comes under technology architecture. So after that, after technology architecture, the next is called opportunities and solutions, where in this opportunities and solutions, where we need to define the kind of steps which are towards changing the current architecture, because the current architecture might be of anything. So wherein whenever we want to change this to the current architecture to the targeted one, especially on the basis of implementation plan, whatever is essentially required. So once the opportunities and solutions were done, one of the most important element which is to be focused more by us is called migration planning. This is where it was. Because migration planning is one of the key element when we are working on, which majorly describes and as well as identify the kind of estimation cost, because when there is a migration of application taken place from legacy systems to the new systems, what is that we are developing, we need to understand the estimated cost, which is something aligned to this. Followed by this, we must be knowing about the timelines which will be taken us to complete this. Followed by this, we need to know about the roadmap implementation, right? So how this is to be taken forward and how we have to move forward. This is where generally roadmap of implementation will be of more important. This is what we do under migration planning. So once the migration planning is done, the next was implementation governance, because governance process and functionalities are something essentially important. This implementation governance and all that, wherein we need to assign the kind of governance functions for different stages of architectural deployment, which is essentially required so that we will be knowing about the governance structure, process, policies, procedures, all that here. Because governance process is something majorly deals with it. Last but not least, when we're talking about architecture change management after implementation of the governance, where in this architecture change management, which majorly provide monitoring and controlling technology of the business, whatever are we going to monitor and understanding about the technology of the business is something comes under architectural change management, where changes might be taken place at any point in time. This is all majorly we need to understand in context to the requirement management from the point of architectural point of view in reference to the TOGAF, which is called the application group framework, which will be initiated from the preliminary stage is all about. So this is what all about this video. If you have any queries, if you have any questions in regard to that. Apart from that, if you have any training or coaching needs in reference to the architecture point of view, either it can be a business architecture or it can be an applications architecture or majorly TOGAF, because as most of the people were moving towards understanding about TOGAF environment, which is for the high level people who have experience, technical experience more. So those people whoever wants to move towards the architectural point of view, TOGAF related stuff, all that. If you have any training as well as coaching needs, please reach out to the contact details, which will be posted in below to this video. Thank you.